Right, I have to do this video first to clarify something important before I can talk about last week's 3 ceremonies that I haven't done summaries of because of what happened, which was fascinating. It was amazing, wonderful experience for me to witness again, but I have to talk about the dreaded word exorcism. And put it in perspective, because most people who do research on ayahuasca probably won't come across it. And even if they do, they will have associations with Catholic kind of horror movie aspects of, you know, events that relate specifically using the word exorcism in a Catholic Church sense, with, you know, Vatican exorcists dressed in black with their crosses and their little amulets and whatever, and in horror movies, blowing it all completely out of proportion. Not to say that those things may not have happened in those situations. I'm not knocking that at all, because I personally believe it because of my own experiences. But we have to keep it in perspective and not have the word exorcism associated with horror movie level people levitating and turning into demons in front of people and stuff. Now, not to say that certain aspects of behavior of certain people in an ayahuasca ceremony cannot appear to be really frightening. And because think of it, look, all shamans, people don't come across information on this duality that I talk about all the time. It's intrinsic to the universe. Dark and light are absolutely intrinsic in a yin yang sense. So think of it like that. So for everything that's light in plant spirit duality, there's a dark side. And it's the job of the shaman, partly amongst many other things, to block the dark energy when you're in an ayahuasca ceremony, including the plant energies that come from ayahuasca, mapacho, because the principle being all plants are both dark and light. The light side obviously offers, you know, aspects of healing, positive energy, positive thinking, which is what you come to ayahuasca ceremonies for. Because the opposite of that is people who come for that need it because they're already contaminated with the darker side of natural spiritual energies. I've spoken about this quite a few occasions. If you go back and look at my video specifically on dark energy in Casa del Sol playlist. And the reason I have to do this video first is because we had a similar situation last week with one of the clients who was nowhere near as bad as my first experience as a Capitari that I've spoken about, but it has to be put in perspective, because so people don't start freaking out and associate it with a particular retreat. And then if they're looking to come to a retreat, they start talking to the facilitators in the video conversation, go, oh, what's this about, you know, a situation where a shaman was involved in an exorcism. I'm scared. Well, look, the reality of it is, it's a term for that can be used generally. But here in South America, we just don't use the term exorcism very much. We use it specifically. I do, because of my previous experiences in that Catholic sense, when energies are that strong that they manifest in certain ways, usually through a particular individual manifesting certain behavior that's, let's say, outside the normal purging process, that can involve really heavy vomiting involving screaming or crying out for the process to stop. Now, you have to talk to shamans about what actually happened to be certain of how strong, and then we might use the term demonic level. It's a spectrum of dark energy. The lowest level can be anything. From my perspective, look, and also bear in mind, this is my viewpoint. This doesn't reflect on individual shamans. It's my experiences and talking to shamans quite a lot. You know, I've met, obviously on my journey, I've met quite a lot of shamans. I've spoken, I don't know how many now, 12, 15, whatever it is, I don't know. But, and some of them, you know, they don't, shamans, you know, they don't talk about this stuff unless they're happy to talk to someone who's had enough experience or had their own similar experiences to talk about what actually happened. They're still going to see it essentially as just levels of strength of particular dark energy. So just think of it like that, and everyone's got it. That's why we call it, but I use the term dirty. Everyone who comes from the West, dirty. Nearly everybody, unless they've got, they've not suffered trauma, they've not suffered, particularly bad life. They've looked after themselves. They've eaten well, maybe vegetarian, vegan, whatever it is. They've really treasured their body, and they meditate a lot, and they're already very spiritually clean. So they don't have much dark energy, and this is why some people who come can have really beautiful first ceremonies, because they don't have to go through even a minimal cleaning process, as that seems to be required in my experiences of myself and watching other people over the last 2 years. So that's why I have to do this video, to really clarify this point, so that people looking at this video don't start freaking out if, like I made the mistake of this. This is why I'm doing this video, because I've made this error before for a retreat in the past that then asked me to take a video down talking about this topic because it caused them problems. So I did. Obviously, I took it down. That's just me being over exuberant, because it's, to me, the whole aspect. I accept all of it. I haven't got a problem with it. And I was never really suffered from fear in that respect, just because I as you know, if you've read my ebook on my first experience, me and Bianca were dropped in at the deep end. We had to go through someone exhibiting all the signs of a severe demonic possession, which was horrendous for us, because he was making so much noise and shouting and speaking in tongues and all sorts of weird behavior, but it was not a psychological problem. It was beyond it. And, that's the conclusion we came to, and you can't deny it. So just bear that in mind. People who are just doing their ayahuasca research and not finding, full amount of information, because most people that come here first time, they don't understand the role of the shaman. They don't understand plant spirituality. They think it's just a drink that's like with a medical view of it, like cough mixture or something. Some people, I just come and take this drink. Yeah, I might have wacky visions, or it's meant to be a bit trippy, probably like mushrooms or similar. Some people have done a lot more research. Some people have spiritual experience of, they've got a different grasp of a level of spirituality and they understand it better. Some people don't do much research and they just think, I've got these problems, I'll come and drink ayahuasca and that will sort me out. I don't have to research anymore. I don't really have to pay attention to the diet much. You get of course you're going to get all sorts of people across all sorts of human personality and experience spectrums, the same as in the actual medicine, the spiritual side of the plant medicine itself. Think of it as a spectrum, but it's an exorcism. Ayahuasca ceremonies is an exorcism to clean you of negative energies. But on that spectrum, it's everything from the energies that can affect, particularly, say, psychological. They're associated with trauma. It might be depression, anxiety, resentment, guilt, just all of the negative feelings that come from the two core emotions in that book, which is a really good description that I spoke about on my first Dieta with Maestro Jairo here. That the book, I was given a book off the shelf, opened it up on a particular page, and the information was just there on certain aspects. But reading a book there that explained, and it's just a really good way of looking at it. There are two core emotions. There's love and fear. And fear generates all the negative emotions. Love generates all the positive emotions. So, you have to be, that's why I haven't done any videos, because I needed to do this video first. And I've been putting it off, thinking about how I'm going to approach it. I thought, well, the only way is get this video out of the way, explaining in my own view when I use the term exorcism, because that's why I haven't done the videos, the 3 ceremonies videos from last week, because we had that situation. So I hope that people take that on board, and anyone thinking about not just this, you don't go hassling the facilitators and freaking out if you're looking at a particular retreat, but you've seen my videos, and just because I've been to a particular retreat and spoken about these type of events, kind of blame it on the retreat or the shaman. The shamans know exactly what they're dealing with. They see this stuff. It's part of their shamanic, experience of their job. So from that perspective, they are exorcists. They're just not dressed in Catholic clothing, and their approach is completely different. Instead of calling, I mean, they will call their own divine interpretation, or plant spirits, or animal spirits, or whatever shamans do. I don't know. My Spanish has never been good enough to be able to broach these conversations. Silly me. Could have had some, really deep insights certainly with some of the shamans that I've had good relationships with, and particularly here, because obviously at Light of Shipibo, I've been here for 4 months. Got a very strong relationship with Maestro Hiro and now Maestro Urias, because he's Shipibo and very powerful too. And we had to go through this situation last week with one of the clients, and the client was he was 11 ceremonies experienced. So for the sake of this video, I might as well talk about that, because it crossed the first 2 ceremonies. So I can actually use this video now to cover my own ayahuasca, because I'm not going to talk about mine stuff, because it's just, there's so much in it. It's similar to, say, things that have gone before. It's more or less routine for me at the moment, with just getting clean on the path, But this is why it's interesting. And that's why last week was fascinating, because it's the first time since my own experiences right at the start of someone else, and also what I called my own exorcism in one of my videos, of having a massive amount of horrendous dark energy that ayahuasca probably been chipping away at for 10 months, and then having that San Pedro ceremony in Casa del Sol that actually I felt it go, that the horrible energy that was killing me. And when I spoke to the guy, Drew, he was a lovely lad. He was, I don't know, 30 maybe. He was an Indian Hindu from Canada. And he had his suspicions, because he'd had 11 previous ceremonies with a shaman in Canada. But let's say, for the sake of argument, maybe that shaman wasn't strong enough to recognize what the level of his, let's call it, first, dark energy contamination. But it was demonic level in my personal view, because of what happened here. It manifested with vomiting, that with no vomit coming up much. It was just the most horrendous, for him, exhausting, repetitive vomiting actions, like shouting, like really, really powerful, over and over again, like I've never heard anybody retch. And so on the Monday, I was obviously in my ceremony. Nothing's happening for me for 2.5 hours, and because of my level of training and insights and experience, I'm thinking, whoa, something really nasty on board there that doesn't want to come out. So that was my first night suspicion. Toward the end of that ceremony, it kind of, the retching and the shouting got worse, and I thought, whoa, yeah, I think I'm right. So in my conversation with Maestro the next day about my ceremony, I spoke about that. We can have a laugh and a joke and just, ooh, powerful energy last night, Maestro, that was kind of demonic level. Yeah. So I asked, how's it going? How long is it going to take, do you think? And at the time he said, maybe all 3 ceremonies this week to get that out. So, but that's how powerful he is. He got rid of it by Wednesday, by the second ceremony. And that second ceremony on Wednesday last week, because it's Monday today, and we've got a new group coming in a minute, Pac Maloka. So a whole new group, always interesting. Still got Jamie from Australia here from last week, doing a second week, which is great. So Wednesday's ceremony, really looking forward to that. And it was amazing for me, because I was actually feeling the Icaros in terms of getting into them and dancing and just supporting Maestro. And at one point, I felt I could see almost an image of what Maestro might be seeing, like a vision into, basic I don't know if it's real, but that was the impression I was getting from Mama when in the second ceremony. Didn't have second cups because Maestro's giving me full small cups now, because I leave it to him to decide, and he knows what I'm doing. He knows what dietas I've done. He knows where I am in my training. And for both me and Joshua at similar levels with different approaches, because we've both done about the same amount of ayahuasca ceremonies. He's done his over 3 years. I've done mine over 2 with a 10-month break. So keep that in perspective as well, about how many ceremonies this occurrence of, if you include mine, I've only had 3 experiences of what I call demonic level infestation. 2 other people plus myself. Mine didn't manifest when it was exercised, but it was just reluctant to come out. And it took San Pedro with a fire blowing ceremony in Ecuador to get rid of like the really big bit, the nasty sort of shit that had to come out. The other 2 people experienced verbal shouting. First one, much stronger than last week in that particular person, strong enough to actually make the ceremony stop, which is why I call it demonic, because it's like an entity that doesn't want to be exercised, and it will shout and scream through the person's body to try and make the Icaros and the ceremony stop, to remove that person, because and that's what happened with this guy last week. In Wednesday night, in maybe about halfway or 3/4 of the way through the ceremony, as all of those energies had built and made people vomit, and he was going through a retching phase with hardly any vomit coming out because he was retching so much. He was exhausted. But the last phase was he actually was shouting out, please God, let it, make it stop. And of course, my previous experience was exactly the same thing in my first 2 ceremonies, witnessing this same behavior, but worse with that person. And they actually did stop the ceremony. And he was just, because he said, I want to go to my room, or I want to go to my room. And they did. So they took him out to his room. And of course, then I thought, that's when it occurred to me, that thing saved itself. And then that particular maestro at that place was working on him for 2 more days after me and Bianca left. And he was much better by the end of the week. But that particular shaman said effectively he had 4 small demons and 1 big one, But I want you, the main thing about this, please take on board, this is nothing to do, this is just about basically the way sometimes the plant medicines know when you do some enough plant medicine, sometimes they guide you, and you don't think it is, but they'll point you when you're looking for retreats. They'll be pointing you at specific ones, almost controlling you. It sounds wacky, I know, but it seems, and I believe this is what happened here. I think the shaman in Canada of this guy, maybe he got an insight, but he wasn't strong enough. Maybe he didn't have enough dietas, enough experience. He didn't have enough spirits to call on that had the right energies. He didn't have the skill or the ability yet at his level as a Canadian shaman, although he trained in South America and blah, but he wasn't indigenous. And then when Dhruv probably realized the extent of his contamination, obviously he's probably got loads of insights, 11 ceremonies before coming here. I think his 12th was here, but a different level with a powerful Shipibo shaman. And then talking to me really helped him out, because he knew. And when I told him my story, there were a lot of parallels, a lot of similarities with our trauma. His father used to literally kick the shit out, lock the door of his bedroom and kick the shit out of him as for child trauma. And any kind of bullying like that, mine was more psychological bullying, but still fear-based. You're in a state of fear as a child, of course you are. So you're dreading that parent coming home or being in that mood and taking it out on you, or your mother, hearing the beatings or the fights when he's drunk and this sort of thing. Terrible for a child, and I've spoken about it before. Can put cracks in the aura, allows dark energy in. Innocent child, that's what the dark energies love, the demonic side, the dark side that links into black magic, if you want to look at it like that. Now, look, again, these are my perceptions and my beliefs of how this works. Okay? Nothing to do with any retreat, either where I am now or I've been in the past. My interpretations from my teachings of my journey of plant medicines. So don't take it out effectively on the retreat. If you hear about situations like this at a particular retreat, don't let it put you off about, oh my God, there's demonic stuff that happens there. It could happen at any of them. The shamans all know this. That's what they're trained for. It's removal of dark energy, and it's just a question of scale. The average person comes with a particular amount of dark energy, say, and over however many ceremonies they need, it's removed. Or not. Not all of it. I'm still getting clean. I'm still being healed after 2 years. There's still things in me to learn, still suffer from irritation, still suffer from potential drawn immediately back to a state of negativity. Like, if something doesn't fit too well or doesn't pan out, as has happened this week for me about the trip to the Philippines. As soon as I started to book the flight, thinking that was all as if like that's your journey. Mama Ayahuasca's kind of given you that clue in the previous videos I've done. All of a sudden, start booking the flight, looking at the prices, and then, yeah, that's possible. And then, better check the visa. What's the visa for the Philippines? Only a month? That's no good to me for the money it will cost to go all the way out there. So then you're thinking, what was all that about? Such heavy information. And this is also another aspect of kind of being sucked into believing certain aspects of the visions that can happen in an ayahuasca ceremony that just don't fit the real world, in practicality or how you feel after them, and it's a really difficult thing to gauge because a lot of ayahuasca is about making you sometimes believe things that you need to believe for a period of time, maybe, that is just about the way which we don't know how it works exactly. Just what goes on with the information of how you're, the matching of the subconscious to the conscious mind is the best model I have for understanding it, all toward the purpose of healing you. And it's a really tricky thing to know kind of what to believe in it. That, especially the next day, it's like you might feel really good and think that, I've given this information and that's what I needed, blah, blah, and it may, and great, and that's part of making you believe something to help your journey and have a different perception of reality than you had before, a different perception of yourself, whatever it is. It's complicated. It's divine. There's only so many questions you can ask. I've had these lessons so often that don't ask. Just don't ask, Steve. Don't go there because it's too complicated. Or eventually the arguments get so circular and they can be so deep in an instant when you're on ayahuasca or many psychedelics. This is what people mean about the flood of information and the depth of vision that you experience under the effects of plant medicines and certain other psychedelics. But it doesn't necessarily mean they're real or they're true. And that's part of your journey, is working that out for yourself and taking away your own interpretation. This is why the whole experience is unique to every individual. And yes, of course, there are similarities across the basic parameters from just the physical, like cleaning, vomiting, and diarrhea, almost a given for everybody at some point. Yawning, tears coming out your eyes, water coming out. These are the nicer forms of purging. But on occasion, energies can be strong enough that they cross the spectrum where when you experience yourself, especially if you're on ayahuasca, and for other people in that ceremony, it can be really frightening experience because their first time as well. If they might just be drawn here to have that experience as I was. I've looked back on that many times, and it's been the best thing that's ever happened to me because I learned so much about dark energy and what I term demonic possession, because it was necessary for me to understand it, because later on I realized that I was suffering from the same phenomenon, just in a different way. So I kind of hope this clears it up, because I don't want people thinking, oh, Steve's been to Light of Shipibo, and that's where he is when this event happened. I'm never going there, my God. Well, you should think the opposite. You should think, wow, their shamans are so good there. They know what they're doing. You know, if anyone's going to remove any level of dark energy, it's those guys. So nothing to worry about, you know? It shouldn't be anything to be afraid of, but fear is the biggest component that people suffer from as part of the ayahuasca journey. You can be put through the most fearful experiences of your life, but Mama knows what she's doing. She'll push you to the limits. I will be talking about this in a minute with the new group. I spoke to Jamie's group last week. We were talking about it at breakfast this morning. Again, he said that everything I told him, as everybody did, the three lads, Jamie and plus the two others here that were last week, said to me that, you know, giving me hugs the next day, after ceremony sometimes, or the next morning. Thank you so much, Steve. And of course, it's wonderful for me to be in that position, to be able to help them with my own experiences of, especially with Drew, of going through it myself, seeing it in someone else before, answering his questions on what happened, finding out what he actually went through as the experience of this energy being removed from him, because it was really strong. And one of the visions that he was given, as he was at the peak of the fear of the power of the Icaros, of this thing being reluctant to come out, he actually believed in the ceremony that he'd been bitten by these massive big insects that drew blood. It was that real for him. Because I said to him the next day, I said, there's no insects, you know, that exist in South America that do that. And certainly not, there weren't any in the Maloka. And then he twigged then and went, oh, of course, well, I didn't have any marks or anything. But he said at that time, when I was crying out, and he was speaking in Hindi, that he was bitten by these insects. So he's not only trying to puke, screaming out, and get bitten on each arm by these visionary insects that drew blood. And of course, he's freaking out. So really, because the demon's just trying to make him freak out so much that he cries out to have the process stopped, because then the demon can remain in its nasty little home where it lives, you know, to live another day. And this is how they control the mind when these forces are that strong. Now, if you haven't experienced it, it might seem, the most frightening thing. You think, my God, there's no way I'm going to be doing ayahuasca. But at the end of the day, if certain people need this, they'll be brought to particular retreats, I believe, because that's what happened to me in my journey. I was taken to a particular retreat that had the particular shaman, and it turned out to be San Pedro, even after all my ayahuasca. No doubt ayahuasca was chipping away at these things, which she tends to do. But the particular energy and the place and the shaman may be just that particular shaman that's required for your type of energy. And the plant spirits seem to guide you. You don't even know it's happening. You just end up somewhere and eventually find the right place. And I have no doubt that that's why he was brought here, because Maestro Urias or Jairo would have had the ability to do it. And of course, there's still all the other factors that people take into account in normal life, of how much they can afford and what's the best value for money, etc. And hopefully do lots of research, read all the reviews on a particular place, and let your intuition decide what's best for you. Watch their videos on their websites. All of this stuff I've spoken about before. So anyway, turns out pretty good. I've covered what I wanted to cover about the sort of basic definition, try and get across this level of understanding. And I've covered the bulk of what was important and why it was an amazing week for me. Because in my side of the ceremony, I had that insights into supporting Maestro in my own way, in my own head, in my belief. As was Joshua. He was the woman the week before he was sending lots of love to, and her husband came in at one point from the toilet and told Josh the next day that he could almost see him sat there as a white panther guarding his wife. And he was really thankful, because then it allowed him in his ayahuasca state to relax and not worry about his wife going through this massive emotional purging. that she was safe and in good hands and surrounded by people full of love and care. And in the same way, the video I did on my spiritual fire, although I wasn't really up on ayahuasca because I was very functional, but I was being moved by the Icaros. I was loving it, kind of feeling the power of his Icaros. I sat up. First time I've ever done that in a ceremony. I felt fine. I was just sitting up at the end of the bed and getting into the Icaros, almost following them. Like I've heard them a few times, but I don't know them. Just following them, listening to his words in Shipibo as it's getting stronger and stronger. And I'm also thinking, gonna get you out. And I was lit in my imagination only, not on ayahuasca, because I wasn't really up. But lighting my spiritual fire and projecting it to support Maestro. No fear at all, because I've seen it before and I've been through it. And this is one of the main things about ayahuasca. It's overcoming fear. And we're riddled with it. The ego only knows fear as a form of protection. And that's why it turns up the gas quite a lot in people's first ceremony, because it doesn't know what's happening to the body. It's got no frame of reference for the experience. So this is why you get the floods of adrenaline. Your heart goes to 220 BPM. And that's why you need to practice these techniques of Buddhist breathing to recenter yourself. And the main second tip that I tell people on their first day that haven't experienced ayahuasca is the breathing, which hopefully they've researched and know about. They should have done, because they really need it if it gets overwhelming. And just belief in Mama Ayahuasca to the point where you just say, Mama, can you dial it back? It's too much. Dial it back, please. And open your eyes or whatever, and just break that moment where it can feel really overwhelming and frightening as hell, like beyond what you can imagine. Jamie went through it last week. We were talking about it this morning. He said that he was a little bit worried because of tonight, because it's first one after a weekend break, but he did fine. I went through it again with him. Said he explained what techniques he used when he had that feeling of, you feel, because you can feel like you're losing your mind. It's quite common. I've been through it. I've been tested with it, as I've spoken about in my videos. From my experiences, when I got the shamanic insights where it was really strong. But I've got such faith in the process and Mama Ayahuasca, the plant spirits, the whole thing, that I know it's almost simulate. I look at it like a simulation. Because I don't have the fear reaction in my body. I still can have. They can still do that, but I know what it is, so it doesn't have the same psychological effect on me, because I just regard it as a test and go, oh, well, that's interesting. I know what that is. I wonder what dark energy it's found in my body to make my body have that reaction. A particular Icaro that Maestro might be singing, or the energies that are being brought into the Maloka that sets off that reaction. Or Mama's just doing it, saying, Steve, you need a reminder. If you're thinking about going away, here's what you used to suffer on a daily basis in your normal life, but worse, just so that you recognize how far you've come. Things like that, So there's always ways. And so, Jamie had the same thing, just that bit of element of doubt. And we went through it. But exactly what he did, the technique he used to ground himself. And this is what people need. And we'll be talking about it in a minute to the new people. And it helps immensely. Nearly everybody since I've been here, that seems to have been my role. And I believe that too. Mama Ayahuasca talks through me for my particular role to help the clients as beginners. And that's it. Help them become a bit more open. The more open you are, the better. Because if you're open, you're already prepared to let yourself go. So you've overcome a certain amount of your fear already to be in a position to do that. But it's not easy. Once the ayahuasca kicks in, and depending on how the visions work for you, how overpowering that can be in itself, in conjunction with the feelings in the body, the nausea, the sickness, the heart rate, the anxiety, all of those things piled on. But you get through it. Everybody gets through it. No one's going to be harmed, because it's about getting control of that ego and diminishing it and removing its power as the powerful but simple program that it is, as a mind program. and overcoming that and having that complete trust. And it's not easy, you know, in your first ceremonies, because it can be such a strange experience for people, you know. And then the other guy, Greg, lovely guy, French Canadian, I think he had the French accent, lovely guy. This is turning out well because I'm actually doing the summaries of my videos and it's still only 35 minutes. That's cool. So he was lovely. Wednesday night, he did have a powerful ceremony on Monday. Didn't talk much about it. He said, "Oh yeah, a lot of strong visions and yeah, it's pretty frightening." But I thought, "Oh, that sounds pretty okay, normal. Most people go through similar. He's fine." And then Wednesday, I was leaving my room last. Everyone had gone to the Maloka about 10 to 8. Came out of my room. He was sat on the bench outside my room, just sitting down. Knew immediately. Just went over to him, put my arm around him. "How are you, brother? You know, how are you feeling?" And he just said, "Just my stomach. I feel I don't want to drink ayahuasca tonight." I said, "Look," went through it, had a nice little chat, gave him Helena's example of her doing 4 ceremonies, and then her 5th, she had the same thing, overwhelming fear, apprehension to not do the ceremony. And I said, "Look, you don't have to do the ceremony. You don't have to drink the ayahuasca. You can still come and do the ceremony. You'll still have the benefit of the Icaros. Sometimes this is all that's required for you because ayahuasca's been working on you since Monday." I said, "Look, you know, so just come to ceremony anyway," because he didn't want to go to the ceremony at all. And I said, "Yeah, look, you're fine. You can still come and just lie on the bed. You'll still get cleaning from the Icaros without having to drink ayahuasca and go through what you're now afraid of. It's fine." I said, "And also, it'll buy you the extra time. Tomorrow, you'll probably feel really good because if you don't have ayahuasca tonight, you'll sleep better. You won't be kept up again." And he admitted it was a massive fear because he'd set his bar at just coming and doing it, try it once and be happy with that. That was his bar he'd set, and he'd done that on Monday. So he'd set his bar a little bit low, but his sense of fear was enough that's what he'd set. But he'd also been brave enough to go to all the trouble to pay and bring himself here just to do that. And then it turned out fantastically because he did that ceremony, felt really good the next day. As I'd explained what will probably happen, after he's rested, ayahuasca's worked on him since Monday, and then he's rested, and then he'll be feeling good on the Thursday, and then the mindset changes because you feel good, and you're also balancing, which is, you know, I didn't say at the time because I already realized that if he didn't do Fridays, he would probably feel really bad about himself when he left because it would be thinking, "God, I was there, I had the opportunity," you know, days later going, why wasn't I just brave enough, you big chicken shit? You know, I was thinking, because that's probably what would have happened to me. Obviously, I didn't say that to him, but that's what I thought would be the outcome if he didn't do it. But I was confident that by the time he'd gone through Thursday and ayahuasca from Monday, and the whole process had worked on him enough, and it worked. He even bought nice white clothes off Maestro Urias, a nice Shipibo t-shirt, all white, and I just happened to be wearing my white stuff that night. And then we met up on Friday night, and he looked brilliant. I said, "Wow, you look the part, man," you know. And he came to ceremony, and he did the drink. And I'd said to him, often what happens, I've been in this situation where sometimes you're just dreading a ceremony because you've had a bad one before and you just don't want to go through it again. And you're thinking, I just don't want to do this one. I'm not going through that again. And then you do, and it turns out to be one of the nicest ones you can have. Totally unexpected. This is the thing. You don't know, every ceremony is different. You don't know what you're going to get. So he did Friday's ceremony, and he had a really nice ceremony. And of course, Saturday morning, big hugs. He was just, "Steve, thank you so much for all your help and guidance." Jamie said the same, and Drew certainly, because obviously I had a bond with Drew when we spoke about his experience of the demonic and come through it. because that's just incredible, because it's faith building. So, and they all said, thank you so much for your tips, because I used them and they worked. So thank you very much. So it's wonderful for me, and that's my pleasure. It's just wonderful to see people surpass themselves, overcome that fear, and then get to that level of trust and faith in Mama Ayahuasca, because it's just a miraculous process. It's beautiful. Once you overcome the fears and have to go through as many ceremonies as you need to get clean enough to start to see some nice things. And like I said, some people get that from the start because they're clean. Most others usually need a couple of ceremonies before. It's that hero's journey, as I've said many times. You have to go through the darkness, no matter what amount, in whatever way it presents itself. Go through that darkness to be able to come up the other side and find the treasure, and then build confidence in yourself, but mainly have the trust in the divine nature of the plant and the other things that exist in this universe. So anyway, on that note, I think I'll call that the wrap, as it's turned out, for all the ceremonies last week. No need to go into mine, except for this strong thing about going to the Philippines, which unfortunately was kind of trashed on the morning, because I just thought, no. So now, also the retreat's closing at the end of this week for a month to finish off building work. So I won't be able to do the extra week. So this is my last week. So this will take me up to 57 on Friday. So it's 55 tonight, ceremony 55 tonight. And also, Josh is probably going to stand down because he wants some of the members of staff, the facilitators, Antonio, Lady, and Karen. Karen's never experienced ayahuasca before. Whichever one of them he steps out for. He might do it, last night he said, but probably he'll stand out to allow the facilitators to do ayahuasca in his place, especially Karen, because she's never done it. And as a facilitator, if you've had experience of ayahuasca, then you know what states, or have an appreciation of the states that people can be in when they're in ceremony, when you're helping them walk back or go to the toilet. You'll know why they're all wobbly and or whatever it can be, or being sick or whatever, because you'd have experienced it. But it may be Lady tonight, I don't know. So it'd be nice to have a member of staff in there. I hope it's Antonio, actually, because he's walked me back so many times. He's done I think a couple in the past, but it'd be interesting to see what Antonio experiences. And then we've got two friends of Ivan, Russian guys, and I think Lenny told me this morning that he thinks they're first timers, and then the other two. No, there's five. There's five guests coming. Yeah, because we're going to have eight tonight. So it should be an interesting ceremony. Not only the reactions of individuals, but with that many people again, back up to 8. So it could be another Oxford Circus tonight. So that'll be fun. Just to see, I was saying to Jamie this morning, I said, you might see what I see a lot, with experience, where when those in about up to the first cup, the second hour, where the cleaning's getting stronger for the first cup, and then the first people start to be sick, and then it can all set off the dominoes, and everyone starts, and it might include us, but probably not me. I don't know, because I've gone back to being clean enough that I just back to fingers in the bedroom after Hyro's unexpected one, even for me, that one that caught me out. When I vomited 8 times in the ceremony, it's like, fuck, that hasn't happened for months. So, you never know. It doesn't matter what stage you're at. Mama knows what level of cleaning or what's still inside you, or whatever that drink finds when it goes through your system and finds in your body the dark energy it finds in you, and then wants to get it out. If she wants to get it out there, and then she will. It doesn't matter what experiences you've had, or you'll be reduced to what's necessary and be humbled by the power of ayahuasca. So it's fantastic. So it should be really interesting tonight. Really looking forward to it. And it's my last week, so it's going to be really sad on Saturday to leave. But in a way, I was relieved yesterday that looking at the visa, because 40 plus hours flight, minimum £1,600 for a return flight. And then possibly with COVID bollocks kicking off in Canada, and if they bring it in, I want to be in South America. I don't want to travel too far, so that in New Year I can get back to Peru, because at least I can come to the retreat and not have to go through all that fucking mask bollocks, and just observe it from a distance, hopefully, and just stay here and pay Josh rent if necessary, or even Lenny told me I can stay at his house, which was really lovely, because I saw his house yesterday in the village, and because he's the builder here, and he's built a fantastic property for himself. Got a Yale lock even on it, which is dead cool. And he said, "Oh, there's loads of fruits there for you to have." So that's just amazing little turn. This is the thing about Aya. You never know what she's planned. Maybe there was a change of situation for what all of that stuff was leading up to. Oh, you've got work for you. Circumstances change. Maybe the plant spirits, something's happened. Oh, no, now everything that they originally planned for my journey, it's the future. It's unwritten. Things change for them too, and then it's like reevaluation. But anyway, that was the upshot of it, just based on the visa. Only a month for the Philippines, can't go. I'm not going. It's just not worth it. It's not worth the money. That money that I'd spend doing that, now I'll go back to Iquitos for a few days, book a flight to Lima, and then just travel south along the coast, checking out different towns and villages, have a bit of time on the sea like I did in Mancora, but obviously without falling into the drink trap. And then be out of Peru for the end of the visa by the end of October, and maybe there's a train from South Peru that goes into Chile. Check the visa for Chile. It's 3 months, the same as far as I know, every other country in South America, and just travel for the next 3 months. First month or so in Peru, see more of Peru. Not the Sacred Valley, I've done it. And up north, I've done it. Didn't think much of the beaches particularly. But we'll see what the seaside towns are like south of Lima. Travel by bus this time, keep the taxi prices down. And I've got to start working on my Spanish. And just try and, because it's my benefit. It's stupid to have not done it much more before, but anyway, it is what it is. So that's the plan at the moment. But we'll see. Got 3 ceremonies to go yet. You never know what might crop up, but anyway. So I'm kind of relieved about the Philippines in a way. So it's just a hellish journey. It's practically halfway around the other opposite side of the world from here, across the whole Pacific. It's a long way. So anyway, I'll get this up now, and I think there's anything to finish off last week. Really, that's the main stuff. Yeah, there's nothing else worth it anyway. And then I'll maybe do tomorrow's, depending. Yeah, it should be interesting tomorrow, because obviously it's a whole new group, and see what we're up against, and what effects the medicine has on them. So anyway, we'll catch up tomorrow.